In 1620, while the Mayflower was in Provincetown, 18 of its men sailed in a small shallop, searching for a place to live. They came to present-day Eastham, where they were met by a group of Nauset. After a brief but violent encounter, the English left towards today's Plymouth. In 2020, we remember this first encounter. We explore its meanings for today and tomorrow.
Welcome. Please welcome our guest, Heidi Scheffler, a local teacher who has many great gifts of observation.
Thank you for having me here. I'm really happy to be back to talk about VJ Day. The stories of VJ Day and the story of First Encounter are both very often framed as stories of the quest for freedom, a freedom that must be competed for, fought for, gone to battle for, and of course gone to war for. For the Nauset and the Pilgrims, each side's necessary freedom was negotiated. There were cries and brandishing of weapons and sounds of guns exploding, but no one was killed, and eventually we learned to be neighbors, however clumsily, however short-lived. Heartbreakingly, violence will accelerate and seem to have the final word. I'm not an expert on war, and I only have the most rudimentary knowledge of this aspect of history. It's only snippets that have been handed down in my culture that I can speak to. So this talk is anecdotal and personal and not scholarly or based on any expertise. So victory over Japan. On June 6th, speaking of D-Day, I noted certainly one of the harshest final words that we have ready story for can be found in the horror of the Nazi extermination camps. The violence that made those men at D-Day willing to lose their own lives in order to eliminate it forever from the face of the earth. I'm less clear what violence or what lies made men capable of destroying city after Japanese city, 68 in all as opposed to 15 in Germany, with conventional and atomic bombs, forcing Japan to capitulate on August 14th or August 15th, depending upon which timeline you're on. Some scholars have concluded that it was not even these bombings that forced Japan to capitulate, but the Soviet change from neutral to hostile, witnessed in the invasion of Manchuria on August 9th. Japan was no longer resisting attacks from one enemy coming from one geographical standpoint, but two on opposite sides. They had resisted so much destruction. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were two more cities. No one knew what these new bombs really meant. My throat closes to think, even to begin to imagine the aftermath for Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the effects of the atomic bombs. It took us a while to realize that the entire world had entered into Cold War. Victory over Japan. The spirit of peace. Dr. Sean Copeland, Professor Emerita of Boston College's School of Theology, gave a talk for the Feast of Pentecost last May for the live stream Lectio Divina series of the Baltimore Carmel. She commented the Gospel passage of John, where Jesus says, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you." She reminded us that in this gospel, the peace of the world meant the Pax Romana, founded on the twin pillars of lies and violence. She described how this peace was experienced differently by different members of the population at the time of Jesus, easier for the privileged than for the poor. She spoke of the peace that Jesus gives, Pax Christi, which is experienced as gentleness, as tenderness, an outpouring of breath that gives life. She made a parallel between Pax Romana and Pax Americana as established more than 400 years ago through colonist expropriation, leading to a form of violence under the guise of peace, experienced today by George Floyd and evident in his last words, "I can't breathe." Do our commemorations today speak to us of Pax Americana, a certain piece of the world, some sort of victory which might be grace-filled for some but not for all of our neighbors? Can we see our way to a spiritual peace, what some might call Pax Christi, something gentle, something tender, something that we all may receive as a gift. Freely, of great price, but of no earthly cost, no earthly battle, no earthly war. Our local origin story and its consequences can serve as a powerful reminder of the value of our common gift. And here I'm paraphrasing Dr. Copeland, calling our whole community to humble openness and dependence upon this gift. As we mentioned before, the Nauset and the English both relied on spiritual gifts. The credit for their winning or losing was not first attributed to themselves, but to the divine. They both entered into relationship with the divine through different forms of prayer in order to prepare before and to give thanks after battle. They made shows of violence, shows of strength, but in both instances recounted in Ian Saxon's book at the first encounter and in the incidents of Thomas Hunt's kidnapping. These were just that, shows which never led to perpetrated violence, allowing the spirit of peace to prevail, at least for a time, and especially here in Eastham, where conflict between native and non-native was lesser perhaps than in any other place due to the historical circumstances that Saxon describes. The gift is poured out to equip the community as a whole for the common good, as Gene Tallon communicated in his Sunset Series talk on Indigenous Peoples Day. Accepting this gift, we are knit together as one body, irrespective of religious or cultic practice, culture or language, socioeconomic or societal standing, gender or ethnicity or race. The spirit of peace. One of the eye-opening experiences of my life came about 7 years after I had graduated from college. As a student of Asian and comparative religion, I had been dreaming of visiting India, the motherland of all religions I had read at the time. It was the birthplace of Mahatma Gandhi and the workplace of Mother Teresa, two of the greatest figures ever to speak to a young woman's idealistic heart. Columbus himself was looking to get there, albeit for different reasons, when he landed on this side of the world. I had the privilege to go to India through a volunteer organization and to be accompanied by a local volunteer. When he took a few of us visiting his friends and family in his Haryana village, about 3 hours from New Delhi by bus, motorcycle, scooter, and camel, I was surprised to discover the same photo on almost everybody's otherwise bare walls, one which I had already seen many times in another part of the country, over 1,000 miles away, in the state of Maharashtra outside of Mumbai. When I asked who it was, the answer was significantly more surprising. That's the liberator of India. The liberator of India, I said. I thought that was Gandhi. Oh, no, he answered. Gandhi was a great man, a holy man, but he couldn't liberate India. This was General Bose, he told me, the ally of Hitler, Mussolini, and Hirohito. His alliance with these powers and the fear that they inspired were what truly forced the English out, not Gandhi's nonviolent resistance. According to this boy and to everyone in his village, and many beyond, Bose was the true liberator of India. Bose had been the president of Gandhi's Indian National Congress, but had had an ideological break after 2 terms, believing that nonviolent force could not secure India's independence, and that violent resistance was necessary. After traveling to Germany, Japan, and the Soviet Union, Bose, with Imperial Japanese assistance, led the Indian National Army in Southeast Asia against British forces until his plane crashed or was downed over Taiwan on August 18, 1945, 3 days after VJ Day. As a Catholic, my first association with August 15th is the Feast of the Assumption of Mary, Mother of God, Queen of Peace. I usually celebrate the joy of this feast day and forget to commemorate the pain and violence that we men are capable of perpetrating in the name of victory. I am still somehow the young woman whose idea of the world is ordered by Gandhi and has never even heard of General Bose. My heart is healed a bit as I write and think about the work of Father Hugo LaSalle, a German Jesuit priest, missionary to Japan for 16 years, Zen master in the Harada Yasutani line, and planner of the Assumption of Mary Cathedral, otherwise known as the Memorial Cathedral of World Peace in Hiroshima. This sacred space and monument to peace says to me that Pax Christi remains, even as Pax Romana and Pax Americana fade away. It says to me that we are capable of hearing the joy and the pain. It says to me that we may be one community, even as seeming opposites or seeming enemies, if we open to the spiritual gift. May we be blessed to receive it, the spirit of peace.